Let me take a step backward now for the second part of my talk and suggest the root of, in my opinion, the root of the dilemma that we faced in the mid and late 70s was this. History, unlike sister social sciences, sociology, psychology, economics, and political science in particular, had never evolved into a professional discipline. These fields, by the pre-World War II era, were well on their way as being developed into disciplines in which participants took jobs as consultants, members of large research organizations, departments of the federal government, state organizations, and so forth, and created a climate where some graduates turned down teaching jobs to become full-time professionals in their respective fields. But on the whole, this did not occur in history. It was characteristic of these other fields. But it didn't necessarily occur in history until the Second World War, when some historians worked in Washington and so forth. The whole idea is that the historians who did not teach were not recognized as bona fide historians, and that was a problem, I think, both at the AHA and the OAH. A situation that never really occurred in these sister disciplines. What we needed was to bring history up to speed. What was needed to bring history up to speed was a paradigm shift. As the public history movement evolved, it occurred to many of us that what we really needed was the creation of a new field of history. In other words, a paradigm shift. Public history that would serve the professional interests of all historians who were not primarily teachers. This was the background of my call to Lydia Bronte again, asking for help to support a conference of the historians that we had published in our journal and other historians that we had in our program in Santa Barbara, and other people that we had met at conferences such as things that types of things that Arnita organized. And hence this was the background of Lydia sending me a check for $30,000, which is a huge amount of money in those days, back in 1979, to organize this conference at Montecito. And we got an ex-nunnery there, a beautiful campus estate type place, to host this conference. Thus the Montecito Conference for spring '79 was born, and the possibility of creating some kind of national organization was on the front burner of the agenda at this meeting. Unfortunately, Bob Kelly could not attend, which is rather a shame, since he was spending the year in Moscow on a Fulbright, so he was having a great time in Moscow. But for 3 days in Montecito, more than 60 participants who we invited spoke and had to get a lot of frustrations off their chests, but they also put forth a lot of creative ideas. And at the end of this 3-day seminar, it was agreed that many of us, at this time at our own expense, as my budget was shot, would reassemble in Washington, D.C. at the National Archives room that was given to us, and the time was set to coincide with the meeting of the federal historians. Thus in September '79, consulting historians, federal historians, academic historians, business historians, state historians, and others joined to create the NCPH and set in motion our second annual conference that took place in Pittsburgh the following spring. Now Arnita, Phil, Robert Pomeroy, David Trask, Larry Tice, and others were notable participants in this conference, which we held in a wonderful room. Is it the conference room of the National Archives? Has these wonderful chandeliers, and I thought, boy, what a historic room in which to have an historic meeting. But it started then as the public history movement, nurtured on the idea of alternative careers that Arnita has really given us a good background in, and now metamorphosized into a national institutional organization with a headquarters in Washington, D.C., a first executive director, Philip Cantelon, and the founder of the NCPH newsletter, Arnita Jones. Myself serving as the chairman of this new organization. The years '78, '79 were vitally important because we now had a national journal and we had a national organization headquartered in the nation's capital. We were no longer simply an amorphous movement. Public history had now entered the arena as an idea that history could be mobilized for public and private benefit. That historians could be employed in a wide variety of circumstances outside of the university. Historians could finally work as historians and not masquerade under other titles in alternative careers. Many universities around the country wanted to create their own programs, or at least public history courses. During this 3-year period, I was invited to visit 18 different campuses as a consultant, people who wanted to develop public history courses or public history programs. Meanwhile, NEH was overwhelmed with a request for assistance to develop public history. Dozens of universities wanted grants to create programs and courses. I received one night a phone call from Bill Bennett, who's now a TV political analyst. At the time, Bill Bennett, an illustrious person, was head of the NEH. And he said, Wes, I wondered if you might do something to help us. We're overwhelmed. Everybody wants to develop a public history program. We don't have the money to fund 30 or 40 requests. But he said what we could do, we thought about it, is to fund a summer seminar, and we'd like you to develop it and invite 30 professors, and we'll give you the names of the people who are interested, and you invite them and set up a summer institute to explain to them how they could develop public history courses and also could develop public history programs. Therefore, I went back to Santa Barbara and said, hey, we got a great thing here. NEH is going to fund this, be a wonderful summer institute. Sorry, Wes. Campus is booked up. Don't you know we have the biggest place in the country for cheerleading camps? Training the cheerleaders? I said, you mean we're going to turn down the NEH? You want me to express the fact that the cheerleaders take precedence? They said, look, they're repeat customers. You guys are a one-shot thing. Well, so what I had to figure out, I thought in my mind, what campus would not be booked in the middle of the summer? And I thought, ha. I'm a former Phoenician from Phoenix, and nobody wants to go to Phoenix in the summer, 115 degrees. So I called up my buddy Noel Stone. I said, hey, Noel, how would you like to host a summer seminar? He said, great. We have lots of room here. We'd be glad to do it. So Noel and I joined forces and invited the people to come. The participants, though, were rather underwhelmed when they found out they weren't going to be surfing in Santa Barbara. Instead, they'd be sweating in Tempe, Arizona. But it worked out. It worked out. I don't think we have any. Are there any veterans here? Yeah. Okay, good. Jeff Brown, yeah. Yeah, well, what did we call it? What did we call our group?
Well, at one point when Noel took us on a Sunday morning tour when it was only about 110, we decided to get T-shirts showing a bunch of people trudging in the desert, and T-shirts said something like "Free the Tempe 30."
But I just thought this as an example of the type of things that we're bubbling up to try to do, and the fact that public history was spreading, the concept was spreading around the country, and many of those people from the 30 Tempe 30, almost all of them developed public history courses, and at least about 8 or 9 of them developed public history programs. So it was a worthwhile thing.